The metallic glint beneath decades of Oakhaven soil wasn't an artifact of nature, but a scar. Liam Thompson, a young man more at home with trowels than textbooks, traced the anomaly on his ground-penetrating radar screen, a flicker of curiosity sparking in the humid summer air of 2025. A mundane calibration led to the excavation of a heavily corroded strongbox, its contents exhumed from where time had tried to bury the unspeakable. What lay with him was an entretter, but a meticulously preserved nightmare. Sarah Jenkins' little journal is paid to build no but he need to stop with the villains that ruined in the arrow of ear. Vintage plurals, phased from the some bearing than selling in the of the official living documents, school records, and the preface eerily altered, alongside personal letters indicated of underfriend of coercion. 51 years. Half a century of silence, broken by this unearthed testament to a horror that had held an entire town captive. In the autumn of 1974, Oakhaven was a town cocooned in rural quietude, its rhythm dictated by the changing leaves and the comforting predictability of community life. Then, on October 12th, that predictability shattered. 31 17-year-old students from Oakhaven High School, bright with the promise of their future, vanished. They were classmates, united by the mundane rituals of adolescence and the shared anticipation of a field trip to Blackwood Creek National Preserve. It wasn't just one life lost, it was an entire cohort, a collective effacement that defied all logic. How could so many young people? Sarah Jenkins, the budding journalist with an insatiable curiosity, Michael Davies, the charismatic class president, Emily Carter, the quiet artist, David Rodriguez, the athletic beacon of energy, and their 27 classmates, disappear from a supervised outing without a trace. The last confirmed sighting was of them disembarking the bus, cameras ready, their laughter echoing through the crisp autumn air. By late afternoon, when the bus driver attempted to round them up, they were gone. No signs of struggle, no scattered belongings beyond a few forlorn items found scattered along a trail, no witnesses to a mass abduction. The statistical impossibility of it all, the sheer scale of the vanishing, left an abyss of unanswered questions, a void where vibrant young lives once bloomed. The evidence unearthed from the strongbox threw a chilling new light on the decades of unanswered questions, promising revelations far more disturbing than any wild speculation had ever conceived. Sarah Jenkins' diary entries, once filled with innocent observations of her classmates and the changing landscape of Blackwood Creek, morphed into a chilling chronicle of calculated manipulation. She wrote of subtle separations, of growing unease, of a meticulously planned operation unfolding around them. The official-looking documents hinted at a sophisticated deception, falsified records suggesting a carefully orchestrated event rather than a tragic accident. This wasn't just a story of kids getting lost in the woods, it was the narrative of 31 lives systematically erased. The unsettling annotations on the vintage photographs, the personal letters suggesting coercion, each piece suggested a conspiracy, a hidden horror woven into the very fabric of their final days. The truth, it seemed, was far more terrible than anyone in Oakhaven could have ever imagined, a deeply buried secret that had festered for half a century. For the families of Oakhaven, October 12, 1974 was not just a date, it was the day their world imploded. Sarah Jenkins' parents, clinging to her meticulously kept diary, lived each day with 1,000 unanswered questions. Mike Davies' optimistic spirit was extinguished, leaving his family in a state of perpetual grief. Emily Carter's quiet presence was replaced by an echoing silence in her home. David Rodriguez's vibrant energy was now just a painful memory. 31 families woke up to the same nightmare, their collective agony a testament to the profound impact of this mass disappearance. They searched, they pleaded, they hoped against hope, but the void remained. Sheriff Brody, a man well-meaning but overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the event, could offer little solace beyond the futile sweeps of Blackwood Creek. The community itself mourned the loss of its youth, the vibrant tapestry of its social fabric torn apart by the inexplicable vanishing of so many, transforming familiar hallways into silent memorials. The raw, unyielding pain of these families, their relentless pursuit of answers after 51 years, is the heart of this story, a testament to the enduring power of love and loss. This is not just another missing persons case. This is the story of 31 bright futures stolen, of a town held hostage by a devastating secret, and of the truth that, after half a century, demands to be heard. We are bringing you the full, unvarnished account of the Oakhaven disappearances. What happened on that fateful day in 1974? How did so many students vanish? And what shocking truth was finally unearthed 51 years later? Join us as we delve into this decades-old mystery, a story etched in the pain of families and the chilling persistence of unanswered questions. We promise the answers will be more disturbing than you can imagine. The metallic glint, unearthed 51 years after the Oakhaven disappearance, wasn't just a discovery, it was a key, unlocking the meticulously curated lives of 31 young people. Among them were Sarah Jenkins, her observant gaze often framed by thick-rimmed glasses, always carrying a dog-eared notebook and a pen poised for action. Sarah, at 17, possessed a journalist's soul, her curiosity a wildfire that consumed every detail, every nuance. Then there was Michael Davies, class president, his easy smile and booming laughter a constant fixture in the school hallways. Mike, with his sun-bleached hair and an athletic build honed by endless hours on the soccer field, exuded a natural charisma that drew people in. Emily Carter, a whisper of a girl, her hands perpetually smudged with charcoal or paint, saw the world in hues and textures others miss. Quiet and introspective, Emily's sketches could capture a fleeting emotion with breathtaking accuracy, her presence often so subtle it was as if she filtered her own reality to protect her sensitivities. And David Rodriguez, a dynamo of freckles and boundless energy, his passion for life as infectious as his winning grin. A star athlete, David's competitive spirit fueled his dreams of collegiate sports, his every movement a testament to his vitality. These four, though distinct, were threads woven into the same vibrant fabric of Oakhaven High's senior class, a tapestry soon to be brutally unraveled. They weren't just classmates, they were friends, confidantes, futures intertwined. Sarah Jenkins in my campaign speeches for student council. Emily saves the vibrant energy of David's soccer matches, and they all shared coolest hours in the cafeteria, planning after-school hangouts, debating the merits of the latest rock bands, and dreaming about their futures. The fall of 1974 was a whirlwind of typical teenage routines for Oakhaven's seniors. Sarah Jenkins practically lived in the school newspaper office, her days a predictable rhythm of chasing leads, interviewing teachers, and wrestling with deadlines. Her evenings were a quiet dedication to her journal, meticulously recording observations about the town, classmates, and even the changing autumn leaves, her family fondly recalling her habit of cataloging everything from grocery lists to profound thoughts in neat, precise handwriting. Mike Davies' schedule was a testament to his leadership, morning student council meetings before school classes, then often rushing off to soccer practice, followed by tutoring sessions for younger students or evening debates with the school's debate club. His parents often marveled at his ability to balance it all, his dedication to community service a core tenet of his upbringing. Emily Carter's days were more solitary, spent often in the quiet corners of the school library or the art room. Her lunch breaks a chance to sketch in her worn sketchbook, the familiar scent of graphite and fixative clinging to her. Her parents knew she wasn't one for loud distractions, understanding her need for quiet reflection. David Rodriguez's life was a blur of athletic achievement. Mornings often began with pre-dawn track practice, followed by school where he was a bright, if sometimes distracted, student, and then afternoon football or basketball practice. His family, proud of his drive, often reminded him to eat properly and get enough sleep, aware of the physical toll his dedication took. Their shared ritual was the anticipation of the Blackwood Creek field trip, whispers in the hallways about the preserve's legendary vistas and the photographic opportunities, Sarah discussing her plans to interview the park ranger, Mike coordinating group activities, Emily packing her best sketchpad, and David eager to find the best trail for a challenging run. Sarah Jenkins was driven by an insatiable need to understand, to bring hidden truths to light. Her journals weren't just diaries, they were investigations, filled with detailed observations that, in retrospect, hinted at a preternatural awareness of undercurrents. Her parents often quoted her saying, "If you don't look for the truth, it stays hidden forever." Mike Davies, conversely, was the embodiment of communal optimism. His leadership wasn't about control, but about connection. He believed in lifting everyone up in collective success. Speaking at his memorial service years later, his best friend recounted, Mike's greatest gift was making everyone feel like they mattered. He made you believe in yourself. Emily Carter's quiet demeanor masked a profound empathy. She absorbed the emotions around her, translating them into art. Her values were rooted in peace and understanding. Her art teacher remembered her. Emily didn't need grand gestures. Her quiet kindness, the way she'd offer a comforting smile or a shared observational silence, spoke volumes. David Rodriguez lives by a code of loyalty and fair play. He was fiercely protective of his friends and believed in giving his absolute best, win or lose. His coach often said, David played with heart. He never backed down, whether it was a game or standing up for someone. These were not reckless teenagers seeking escape. They were anchored by deeply held principles and a profound sense of belonging. The future bloomed in their conversations, a vibrant palette of aspirations. Sarah Jenkins dreamed of becoming a Pulitzer-winning investigative journalist, her goal to expose corruption and give voice to the voiceless. She meticulously saved articles and newspaper clippings, her room a testament to her singular focus. Mike Davies envisioned a career in public service, perhaps law or politics, inspired by a desire to make his community a better place. He had already started researching universities with strong political science programs. His application essay is outlining ambitious civic projects. Emily Carter hoped to attend art school, to dedicate her life to creating beauty and challenging perceptions through her paintings and drawings. She'd spoken excitedly about a potential scholarship she'd applied for, her portfolio already comprising years of dedicated practice. David Rodriguez's dreams were centered on sports, a scholarship to a major university, and eventually playing professionally. But beyond that, he talked about using his success to support his family and mentor younger kids from Oakhaven, ensuring they had the opportunities he worked so hard to achieve. They all had responsibilities, too. Sarah helped care for her younger siblings after school. Mike was a constant support for his aging grandmother. Emily often helped her artistically inclined mother with framing and displaying art. David contributed to his family's finances by working weekends at a local diner. They were deeply rooted, tethered to their loved ones and future ambitions by bonds too strong to sever. The enigma surrounding these 31 young lives begins with their very essence. Sarah's meticulous planning and innate suspicion, Mike's unwavering commitment to his responsibilities, Emily's quiet but steady presence within her family, and David's vibrant, forward-looking perspective all scream against any notion of voluntary departure. There was no indication of depression, no whispered secrets of unhappiness, no clandestine affairs or desperate debts. Their family bonds were strong, depicted in the letters and diary entries Liam unearthed. Sarah's fervent assurances to her parents, Mike's affectionate messages to his siblings, Emily's shared dreams with her mother, David's promise to his father to make him proud. They were more than just a class, they were a collective of bright futures, each with individual constellations of hopes, dreams, and obligations that made their vanishing utterly incomprehensible. The idea of 31 teenagers, drawn from diverse backgrounds but united by shared experiences and a collective optimism, orchestrating such an elaborate, simultaneous disappearance without leaving a single, clear cry for help, without any prior indication, strains credulity to its breaking point. It solidifies the chilling certainty that their absence was not a choice, but a devastating interruption. Oakhaven, Ohio, 1974. Main Street was a quiet artery, lined with brick buildings that had seen better days, their storefronts showcasing necessities, Miller's Hardware, the Oakhaven Diner, the single-screen cinema, the Majestic, its marquee a faded promise of glittering escapism. Beyond the town center, the landscape bled into dense, ancient forests, the imposing silhouette of Blackwood Creek National Preserve looming on the horizon, its shadowed valleys and whispering pines a constant, verdant presence. The air itself, even in early autumn, carried the damp, earthy scent of decaying leaves and distant wood smoke, a palpable reminder of nature's persistent hold. Children, free from the ubiquitous glow of screens, roamed dirt roads and climbed the sturdy oaks that gave the town its name, their laughter a fleeting melody in the pervasive stillness. It felt like a place where time slowed, a haven of predictable rhythms, where front porches served as daily gathering spots and a neighbor's wave was a given. The familiar crunch of gravel underfoot, the distant hum of a tractor, the low murmur of conversation drifting from open windows, these were the sensory markers of Oakhaven, an unassuming stage set for a moment of profound disruption. The fall of 1974 painted Oakhaven in hues of amber and rust, a season of harvest and hushed anticipation before winter's grip. The nation was grappling with the aftermath of Watergate and the lingering oil crisis, but here, in Oakhaven, these grander dramas felt distant echoes against the backdrop of local rhythms. Lyndon B. Johnson had recently passed, and the bicentennial preparations for 1976 were a faint, future whisper. Socially, life moved at a different pace. Communities were tighter-knit, trust more implicitly placed in neighbors and local authorities. Technology was rudimentary by today's standards, rotary phones in every home, the occasional FM radio crackling with news and music, and television sets that flickered with a handful of channels. Jeans were high-waisted, hairstyles leaned towards feathered or shaggy, and the music of Fleetwood Mac, Eagles, and John Denver filled the airwaves. For the teenagers of Oakhaven High, this was their world, a simpler, slower existence, perhaps more innocent, but also less prepared for the complexities and dangers that lurked beneath the surface of such rural quietude. The predictability was both a comfort and, as history would show, a crucial vulnerability. Oakhaven itself was a community built on shared history and interdependence. The families of the 31 students represented a cross-section of the town's fabric, from the descendants of old farming families to those who worked at the local paper mill. Sheriff Brody, a man with kind eyes and a weary set to his shoulders, was as much a fixture as the town hall clock. He knew everyone's name, their father's name, and had likely delivered half the children now attending Oakhaven High. Neighbors looked out for each other, and the school was the heart of the community, its athletic events and parent-teacher nights drawing the largest crowds. Local traditions, like the annual Harvest Festival and the summer 4th of July parade, were deeply ingrained, reinforcing a sense of collective identity. Children were expected to be respectful, to help at home, and to participate in community life. There was a level of unexamined trust in the system, in teachers, in authority figures, in the very predictability of life that characterized the era, a trust that would be seismically shattered. The shared understanding was that Oakhaven was safe, a sanctuary from the world's harsher realities. Yet, even in this seemingly idyllic setting, subtle shifts and ignored indicators hinted at underlying vulnerabilities. The forest surrounding Blackwood Creek, while beautiful, was also vast and unpredictable, a place where one wrong turn could lead to days of disorientation. The service road mentioned in later discoveries, an overgrown, disused track branching off the main path to the preserve, was known to local teenagers for its isolation, a place for illicit gatherings or quick getaways. The town's reliance on limited industries also meant that economic disparities, though perhaps not openly discussed, created a social stratification, with some families more susceptible to promises of opportunity. The limited nature of law enforcement in such a rural area, while fostering community closeness, also meant a reduced capacity to respond to sophisticated threats. The very insularity that made Oakhaven feel safe also made it a prime target for those who operated in the shadows, leveraging the town's trust and lack of constant oversight. There was a collective blindness, perhaps born of comfort, to the notion that something truly sinister could occur in their quiet corner of Ohio. And so, the stages were set. The autumnal air, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant bonfires, seemed to whisper with an unspoken foreboding that went unnoticed amidst the mundane routines of schoolwork, friendships, and the shared thrill of an upcoming field trip. Oakhaven High's hallways, usually buzzing with the vibrant energy of young lives, were alive with anticipation for the Blackwood Creek excursion. Sarah Jenkins, her notebook already filled with observations about the changing leaves, meticulously planned her journalistic angles. Mike Davies, class president, finalized his organizational duties, his smile radiating confidence. Emily Carter packed her worn sketchpad, ready to capture the preserve's beauty, while David Rodriguez, ever the athlete, shouted potential running routes in his mind. These 31 humans, so deeply rooted in the fabric of the seemingly secure town, were about to hold a hidden darkness, their familiar world transformed into a precipice of an unthinkable tragedy, all due to the seemingly innocent journey into the wavering woods of Blackwood Creek. The alarm blares, a jarring sound piercing the pre-dawn stillness of Oakhaven, Ohio, on October 12, 1974. Sarah Jenkins' eyes flutter open at 6:15 a.m., the insistent buzz of her bedside clock a familiar annoyance. Sunlight, pale and hesitant, begins to paint the edges of her bedroom curtains. She stretches, a quick, habitual movement before swinging her legs out of bed, the cool linoleum a shock to her bare feet. A quick glance at her dresser reveals the neatly laid-out clothes for the Blackwood Creek field trip: sturdy jeans, a comfortable flannel shirt, and her trusty hiking boots. This day, a much-anticipated escape from the usual routine, promises exploration, photographs, and the chance to finally interview Park Ranger Miller about the preserve's history. Across town, at 6:30 a.m., Michael Davies' alarm is already a distant memory. He's usually up before it, propelled by an innate drive. Today is no different. He's dressed in his Oakhaven High Letterman jacket over a t-shirt, a testament to his popularity and role as class president. He pauses by his parents' bedroom door, a quick, quiet pat to let them know he's up, a silent promise of a good day. His mind races with the day's plans, coordinating the subgroups, ensuring everyone has a packed lunch, and maybe, if there's time, strategizing for the upcoming debate club championship. In a slightly quieter corner of Oakhaven, Emily Carter's day begins at 6:45 a.m. Her parents' gentle encouragement stirs her awake. The air in her room, usually tinged with a faint scent of turpentine and charcoal, feels crisp and expectant. She carefully selects her outfit, practical, but with a touch of her artistic flair evident in the muted colors. Her sketchbook, worn and filled with countless impressions of the world, is already tucked into her backpack, an essential companion for capturing the beauty of Blackwood Creek. She mentally reviews the subjects she wants to capture: the ancient trees, the play of light through the canopy. David Rodriguez's internal clock is set to 6:00 a.m. The energetic thump of his athletic heart is already a rhythm beneath his skin. He's dressed and ready, eager for the day's adventure, imagining the trails he'll conquer. His gym bag, packed with essentials, waits by the door. He grabs a quick, hearty breakfast, his parents offering words of encouragement and a reminder to stay with the group. His conversation centers on which of his friends will be on his hiking team and the possibility of spotting rare bird species, a shared interest he hopes to explore. The morning unfolds with a ballet of small, significant moments. At 7:10 a.m., Sarah Jenkins shares a quick breakfast with her parents, discussing her planned route for capturing candid shots. Her father reminds her to be mindful of her footing, watch where you step, Sarah, and have fun. Her mother presses a few extra dollars into her hand for a souvenir. Mike Davies, at 7:20 a.m., is already at the bus pickup point, easily conversable with early arrivals. He uses his phone, a bulky, beige rotary model, to confirm directions with one of the chaperones. Emily Carter, at 7:30 a.m., bids a quiet goodbye to her mother, receiving a gentle kiss on the forehead, a silent wish for a safe return inscribed in the gesture. David Rodriguez, at 7:25 a.m., bursts into the gathering throng at the school, his booming laugh echoing as he greets his friends, a radiant smile on his face, oblivious to the finality of his infectious energy. The bus, a familiar yellow behemoth, hums with anticipation. At precisely 8:00 a.m., the Oakhaven High School bus departs, carrying 31 eager teenagers and 2 accompanying teachers, Ms. Albright and Mr. Hiddison. Sarah Jenkins settles into an aisle seat, her notepad and pen readily accessible, already jotting down observations about the mood on the bus. Mike Davies, near the front, orchestrates a quick game of I Spy to break the ice and keep the energy positive. Emily Carter finds a window seat, her gaze already drawn to the receding Oakhaven landscape, her fingers itching to sketch. David Rodriguez, with a cluster of his closest friends, jokes and points out landmarks along the highway, his spirit soaring. The initial hours of travel are filled with the mundane symphony of teenage chatter, music from portable radios, and the shared excitement of a day away from classrooms. As the bus winds deeper into the countryside, the paved roads give way to gravel, and the dense foliage of Blackwood Creek National Preserve begins to close in. By 10:45 a.m., the bus pulls into the designated parking area. The air is cooler here, alive with the scent of pine and damp earth. At 10:55 a.m., the students disembark, a vibrant wave of color and sound against the muted greens of the forest. Sarah Jenkins, camera in hand, immediately begins capturing the scene, her journalistic instinct already at work. Mike Davies gathers the group, his voice clear and confident, reminding everyone of the day's schedule and the assigned smaller hiking groups. Emily Carter, absorbing the atmosphere, finds a quiet spot to sketch the towering preserve entrance sign, the rough-hewn wood a stark contrast to the refined lines she prefers. David Rodriguez, with a group of friends, eagerly inspects a trail map, planning their route with athletic anticipation. At approximately 11:30 a.m., the 31 students, divided into 6 small subgroups, set out on predetermined trails. Sarah Jenkins' group follows a path leading towards the Whispering Pines, her attention caught by an unusual cluster of wildflowers off the main trail. Mike Davies' group, tasked with a shorter loop, pauses to discuss their photography assignments. Emily Carter's group, slower paced, pauses at a scenic overlook, her sketchbook emerging. David Rodriguez's group, eager for a more rigorous hike, ventures onto a less marked path, their laughter and calls fading into the trees. Ms. Albright confirms their status via a crackling CB radio at 12:30 p.m., reporting enthusiastic progress. The last confirmed sighting of any of the students is that the lone park ranger in the 15 is at 1:15 p.m. A glimpse of the Sarah Jenkins, the other students examined what appeared to be evidence of small, overburdened their figures disappearing into the shadows. The scheduled regrouping for the bus departure is for 4:00 p.m. When 4:15 p.m. arrives and the students are not visible, the bus driver, a Mr. Abernathy, calls out, his voice tinged with mild impatience. No response. He tries again, a bit louder. The only sound is the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird. At 4:30 p.m., a prickle of unease begins to manifest. Abernathy walks a short distance down the nearest trail, calling out names. He finds no one. By 5:00 p.m., as the sun begins its descent, casting long, eerie shadows, the chilling realization dawns. All 31 students are gone. The bus, a silent witness, sits empty in the twilight. The investigation, as it would later be pieced together, begins with a growing dread, a void where vibrant young lives should have been, the first tendrils of a 51-year mystery beginning to coil in the deepening woods of Blackwood Creek. 6:00 a.m., 6:15 a.m., 6:30 a.m., 6:45 a.m. The morning of October 12, 1974, began with the mundane ticking of clocks in Oakhaven, each student's day unfurling with its usual rhythm. For Mrs. Jenkins, it was 7:10 a.m., a hurried breakfast, the familiar scent of coffee mingling with Sarah's backpack, a quick reminder about watching her footing. For the Davies family, 7:20 a.m. brought a quiet pat on the bedroom door, Mike already a phantom of organized energy. The Carters' gentle nudge at 6:45 a.m., the scent of turpentine in Emily's room, felt like any other morning start. David Rodriguez, ever the early riser, was a blur of motion from 6:00 a.m., his booming laugh a familiar sound. But by 4:00 p.m., when a yellow behemoth of the Oakhaven High bus was scheduled to return, the comforting predictability free. Abernathy, the driver, called out names, his voice initially laced with mild impatience. By 4:15 p.m., a prickle of unease. By 4:30 p.m., he was walking the initial stretch of Trail 7, his calls swallowed by the vastness of Blackwood Creek. By 5:00 p.m., as long shadows stretched across the empty bus, a chilling certainty began to dawn. 31 students and their 2 chaperones had vanished. The first failed contact attempts were subtle, inconsequential in the morning's excitement. A missed call never returned, a text that went unread. As noon gave way to afternoon and the expected arrival time neared, the silence became deafening. A quick check of a school schedule by a parent, a casual query about the bus's ETA that yielded no immediate reassurance, began to seed as subtle anxiety. Mrs. Jenkins, expecting Sarah's usual excited debrief of the trip, found only silence when she tried calling her daughter's borrowed disposable camera at 3:30 p.m. The Davies family, anticipating Mike's proud recounting of his leadership, felt a knot tighten as 4:00 p.m. ticked by without his call. Similarly, the Carters and Rodriguez families began to share a growing disquiet as the hours slipped past. The escalating silence fractured at 5:15 p.m. when Mrs. Jenkins, her voice trembling, reached the Oakhaven Sheriff's Department. "My Sarah," she began, the words catching in her throat. "She's on the Blackwood Creek field trip. The bus was supposed to be back by 4, and I haven't heard anything. She is only 17. The dispatcher, a young woman named Brenda, sounded calm, trained. "Ma'am, it's a long drive from Blackwood Creek. Traffic can be an issue. Are the chaperones teachers? They'll be handling the return trip." Mrs. Jenkins insisted, her anxiety a palpable force through the phone line. "It's not just Sarah. They're saying all the kids aren't back. All 31 of them." Brenda's tone shifted instantly, the professional calm now edged with a stark alarm. 31? The thought was staggering. Almost simultaneously, or within minutes of each other, Sheriff Brody's office was fielding similar calls. The Davies, the Rodriguezes, the Carters, joined by a growing chorus of frantic parents, painting a unified picture of utter catastrophe. The initial response was a flurry of activity, dispatchers relaying information. Sergeant Miller, the senior deputy on duty, immediately understanding the gravity of a mass disappearance. "Get me Superintendent Henderson at the school, now," he barked into his radio, his mind already racing through protocols, and confirmed the bus driver's name and vehicle. The information painstakingly gathered was grim. 31 17-year-olds, the entire senior class cohort for this particular trip, plus 2 teachers, simply gone. Sergeant Miller's investigation began not with speculation of runaway teenagers, but with the stark reality of an entire group's vanishing act. He had Sheriff Brody dispatch deputies to the school to secure any potential evidence left behind and to begin immediate interviews with faculty who hadn't been on the trip. The school principal, Mr. Henderson, already pale and shaken, confirmed the passenger manifest. Miller initiated a preliminary search team composed of deputies familiar with the Blackwood Creek area, their primary objective to head directly to the preserve and establish a perimeter, looking for any sign of the bus or the students. The initial theories, whispered in the growing panic, ranged from a horrifying accident, a landslide, a sudden flash flood overwhelming a trail, to, more chillingly, a collective abduction. But the sheer scale of both options seemed incomprehensible. Miller's first few hours were a whirlwind of coordinating resources, requesting state police assistance, alerting neighboring county sheriffs, and initiating a full-scale ground search that would commence with the first light of dawn, given the fading visibility. The Oakhaven Sheriff's Department, a small unit accustomed to minor disturbances, found itself suddenly thrust into a crisis of national magnitude. Deputy Evans, a young officer barely out of the academy, was tasked with compiling the detailed passenger list, cross-referencing it with home addresses and emergency contacts in a desperate attempt to track down every last family and gather immediate witness information. The first 48 hours were a blur of frantic activity and crushing disappointment. Search parties scoured the designated trails and surrounding wilderness of Blackwood Creek, finding only scattered, inconsequential items: a lone hiking boot, a discarded water bottle, a partially eaten sandwich near an overgrown cave entrance found by Sarah Jenkins' group, its significance not yet fully grasped. Deputy Evans, working around the clock, managed to reach every family, gathering descriptions, last known clothing, and any pertinent behavioral notes. He learned of Sarah's observant nature, Mike's leadership, Emily's quiet artistic eye, David's boundless energy. He meticulously documented the last known sightings based on the bus driver's account and the limited confirmations from the chaperones earlier in the day. The theories were discussed, debated, and ultimately dismissed as insufficient. A runaway scenario for 31 teenagers simultaneously was implausible. A single perpetrator powerful enough to subdue and transport such a large group without a trace seemed almost mythical. The lack of any clear evidence of a struggle, blood, or forced removal was the most baffling aspect. The initial search area was vast, the terrain unforgiving, and the resources, though bolstered by state police, felt woefully inadequate against the immensity of the mystery. The critical window, the first 48 hours, as Sergeant Miller grimly reminded his team, was rapidly closing, and with it, the hope of a quick resolution. By the end of the second day, the hope of finding the students alive and well was giving way to a grim understanding. The initial, widespread search of Blackwood Creek had yielded nothing definitive, the lack of any clear sign of the missing group becoming the most alarming piece of evidence. Sergeant Miller and his team were facing the stark possibility that this was no accident and no simple runaway situation. The sheer organizational effort required to make 31 individuals, plus their chaperones, disappear so completely was chilling. The growing media attention, with reporters descending on the usually quiet town of Oakhaven, added an immense pressure. Families, their initial panic replaced by a hollow despair, were starting to lash out, demanding answers that Miller simply didn't have. The few scattered items found Sarah Jenkins' diary, a peculiar metallic button discovered near the cave, were being meticulously processed by forensics. But the slow pace of analysis felt agonizingly inadequate against the urgency of the situation. The initial theories were proving insufficient, forcing investigators to consider possibilities far more disturbing than they had ever imagined. A chilling foreboding settling over Oakhaven as the magnitude of the mystery began to truly sink in. The absence of 31 students on a crisp October afternoon in 1974 sent a tremor of disbelief, then panic, through Oakhaven. Within hours, the town square, usually a hub of quiet commerce, transformed into an impromptu ground zero. Neighbors, united by shared fear for their children, organized themselves organically. Sarah Jenkins' parents, Mrs. Jenkins in particular, with her journalist's instinct for organization, became the de facto coordinators of civilian efforts. Flyers, hastily printed at Miller's Hardware, bearing the hopeful plea "Have you seen our children?" began to plaster every available surface. Volunteers, armed with flashlights, blankets, and thermos flasks of coffee, formed search parties that fanned out from the school gymnasium, which quickly became a makeshift command center. Retirees who knew the woods like the back of their hands, young men on bicycles, and even a few teenagers who hadn't been on the trip, joined the effort, their collective determination a palpable force against the encroaching darkness. The local pastor offered the church for rest and regrouping, its quiet sanctity now a place of shared anguish and rallying resolve. As dawn broke, signaling the official start of the search, the true scale of the mobilization became apparent. State police cruisers, fire department vehicles, and county sheriff's jeeps converged on Oakhaven, a stark contrast to the town's usual tranquility. Helicopters, their rotors a powerful thrum against the morning air, began a systematic sweep of Blackwood Creek's vast expanse. Specialized K-9 units, their handlers sharp and focused, joined the ground search, sniffing for any trace of the missing students. Sheriff Brody, overwhelmed but resolute, established a formal command center in the school auditorium. A detailed map of the preserve spread across tables, crisscrossed with colored tape marking search sectors. Firefighters, equipped with ropes and climbing gear, prepared to access treacherous ravines, while volunteer divers from neighboring communities were on standby, ready to search the preserve's deeper water bodies. Technologies far beyond the capabilities of 1974 local force were deployed. Early drone prototypes, primitive sonar equipment, and sophisticated radio communication systems that sought to knit together the fractured search efforts. The initial discoveries were agonizingly fleeting. A single, mud-caked sneaker, identified as belonging to David Rodriguez, was found snagged on a thorny bush just off a rarely used service road, injecting a surge of fervent hope into the weary searchers. Nearby, clutched in the roots of an ancient oak, was a crumpled but still legible bus manifest, its name's a chilling reminder of the 31. Then came Sarah Jenkins' diary, its pages damp but intact, discovered near a small, overgrown cave entrance. Initial examinations of the diary entries, particularly those concerning the growing unease and planned separations, fueled speculation of a manipulative mastermind at play. Yet, the promise of answers was consistently dashed. Attempts to trace the unusual tire tracks found near the cave proved futile. Their origin point was too remote, their imprint too degraded. Witness testimonies, though numerous, were fractured. A fleeting glimpse of figures near the tree line, a sound that might have been a distant shout, vague recollections of an unfamiliar vehicle parked on the periphery of the preserve days before. Each fragment, initially a beacon, dissolved into ambiguity, leaving behind only the gnawing frustration of leads that evaporated upon closer inspection. The sheer immensity of Blackwood Creek National Preserve presented an almost insurmountable geographical obstacle. Its dense forests, rugged terrain, and countless unmarked trails meant that even with extensive resources, covering every inch was a monumental task. The primitive mapping technology of 1974, coupled with communication limitations between dispersed search teams, meant coordination was a constant struggle. Weather, too, became an antagonist. A sudden, unseasonable downpour on the third day of the search turned muddy trails into treacherous quagmires, making K-9 units less effective and hampering helicopter operations. The limited budget of the Oakhaven Sheriff's Department, even supplemented by state aid, began to feel the strain of such an extensive, multi-day operation. Personnel were exhausted, the constant poring over maps yielding no productive breakthroughs, only a growing inventory of the vastness of their failure. The search area was simply too extensive for the resources available, a stark reality that began to erode even the most resilient hopes. As the first week of the intensive search drew to a close, the initial surge of community volunteers began to dwindle. The endless days of fruitless searching, the constant cycle of hope for a discovery followed by the crushing disappointment of finding nothing, took its toll. Families clinging to the hope of their children's return were visibly weary. The national media, initially a source of support and increased manpower, began to shift its focus, hungry for any concrete development that never materialized. While official resources remained committed, the sheer cost of maintaining such a large-scale operation became a significant concern. Discussions began, quiet at first, about scaling back efforts, about reevaluating priorities. The overwhelming realization dawned that this was not a simple case of lost hikers. The collective disappearance of 31 individuals, accompanied by the inexplicable absence of any definitive evidence, pointed to a mystery far deeper, far more complex, and far more chilling than anyone in Oakhaven, or indeed, anyone involved in the investigation, had initially imagined. The hope of a quick resolution was fading, replaced by the grim prospect of a long, arduous road ahead, with the true nature of the students vanishing still shrouded in an impenetrable fog. The years following October 12, 1974, were a relentless march of dwindling hope for Oakhaven. The initial intensive search, a whirlwind of local, state, and federal resources, officially suspended active operations after 3 grueling weeks. Sheriff Brody, his face etched with exhaustion and defeat, transferred 31 thick, dull-geared case files to the newly established cold case unit, the bureaucratic transfer, a stark symbol of the transition from the active crisis to enduring shadow. Resources, once poured into helicopters and K-9 units, were inexorably redirected. The Oakhaven Sheriff's Department, a small force never designed for such an enduring, large-scale mystery, saw its personnel reassigned to more immediate local concerns, their involvement with the Oakhaven 31 becoming a painful, unresolved chapter in their careers. The case remained open, a perpetually flagged file, but its active pursuit had dissolved into the slow, steady erosion of time and dwindling budgets. The files, once filled with frantic notes and potential leads, became a testament to the limits of human endeavor against an overwhelming void. For the families of the missing, hope mutated into a complex, evolving torment. Sarah Jenkins' parents, clinging to her diary and a phantom scent of her perfume, established a solemn unbirthday celebration every April, a silent acknowledgement of the future Sarah never had. Mike Davies' sister, once a bubbly teenager, grew into a reserved woman, her marriage strained by the unspoken grief that cast a permafrost over their family gatherings. Emily Carter's quiet devotion to her art intensified, her canvases often filled with solitary figures gazing into vast, empty landscapes, a visual echo of her family's unending search for answers. David Rodriguez's parents, initially vocal and demanding, eventually retreated into a quiet resignation, their once vibrant home becoming a shrine to his memory. Some families fragmented under the strain. Others bonded, forming support groups that met monthly in the Oakhaven Community Center, their shared pain a fragile tapestry of communal suffering. The anniversaries of the disappearance became poignant rituals, quiet vigils, candlelit memorials, the posting of updated flyers on dusty notice boards, a desperate hope rekindled each year only to be met with the familiar silence. As the decades wore on, the Oakhaven disappearances transcended local tragedy and migrated into the burgeoning digital world. Dedicated online forums sprang up, populated by amateur sleuths, armchair detectives, and individuals with a morbid fascination for the unsolved. Podcasts dedicated to true crime dissected every detail, proposing outlandish theories from government cover-ups to extraterrestrial involvement, each one a tiny spark of attention that either reignited a flicker of hope or inflicted fresh pain on the families. Sarah Jenkins' diary, meticulously documented and analyzed by countless internet users, became a central exhibit in these digital discussions, her fear dissected, her observations debated. Conspiracy theories flourished alongside more grounded analyses of the scant evidence. Families found themselves navigating a complex landscape, attempting to leverage the renewed attention for answers while simultaneously battling the invasion of privacy and the reduction of their loved one's existence to mere entertainment. The balance between needing the world to remember and wishing to shield their private pain proved impossible to strike. The financial and emotional toll of prolonged uncertainty spurred many families to seek alternative resolutions. Private investigators, drawn by the enduring public interest and the lucrative possibility of cracking the case, were hired for periods, their efforts often yielding more questions than answers. One family, convinced of a local conspiracy, poured their savings into a decades-long, solitary search for the mythical service road mentioned in early, unverified reports, their relentless expeditions into the Blackwood Creek wilderness proving fruitless and dangerous. Psychics and mediums offered comforting, yet unsubstantiated, visions of their children's fates, fleeting moments of perceived connection that ultimately deepened the cycle of promise and crushing disappointment. These desperate attempts, fueled by an unyielding love, became a painful ritual, a testament to the human drive to find closure even in the face of overwhelming odds, and a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities that unaddressed grief can exploit. Over 50 years, the Oakhaven disappearances wove themselves into the very fabric of the town's identity. Blackwood Creek, once a place of scenic beauty, became a somber landmark, a repository of unspoken sorrow. New generations of investigators occasionally reviewed the files, applying emerging forensic techniques to the scant evidence, only to find the trail as cold as ever. The narrative of the 31 students transformed from a shocking incident into a chilling local legend, whispered in Oakhaven's diners and debated in its schools. The annual vigil became a permanent fixture on the town calendar, a quiet yet powerful reminder of the mystery that had irrevocably shaped their community. Each passing year, each unsubstantiated tip, each failed attempt to breathe life back into the investigation, reinforced the sense that the case had become a permanent scar, a haunting presence that awaited the catalyst, a hint of something truly profound and disturbing hidden within the years of silence, preparing the ground for a truth that would finally shatter the lingering peace, if such a thing could be called peace. The humid summer air of 2025 hung heavy, the usual drone of cicadas punctuated by the rhythmic thud of Liam Thompson's trowel against the earth. He was calibrating his ground-penetrating radar near a less-trafficked section of the reclaimed Blackwood Creek Preserve, a project focused on environmental soil analysis. It was a routine task, mundane as yesterday's lunch, until the radar screen painted a stark, metallic anomaly in the soil. Curiosity nudged him to dig. 30 minutes later, a corroded strongbox, barnacle-encrusted and heavy with the weight of time, lay exposed. Brushing away the clinging earth, Liam felt a prickle of unease. This wasn't natural. A quick, almost involuntary tug, and the rusted latch gave way with a groan. The air, stagnant within, released a faint, papery scent. His gloved fingers carefully lifted a leather-bound journal, its pages stiff and brittle. Beneath it lay a stack of faded photographs, faces frozen in time, and a bundle of official-looking papers. His breath hitched. The meticulous preservation spoke of intention, the contents of a carefully buried secret. The journal, Sarah Jenkins' meticulous script, was heartbreakingly clear. The early entries detailed the mundane anticipation of the Blackwood Creek field trip on October 12, 1974. But then, the tone shifted. Observations about her classmates morphed into a chilling chronicle of isolation and fear. She wrote of being subtly directed to specific trails, of hushed conversations, of a planned separation from the main group, all disguised as spontaneous activities. The unearthed photographs confirmed this, images of students grouped separately, their smiles strained, some with unsettling annotations on the back, names and dates Liam didn't recognize, scribbled with a desperate hand. The documents were even more chilling, school attendance records that seemed altered, bus manifests with odd cross-outs, and personal letters hinting at coercion, promises of future opportunities twisted into veiled threats. This wasn't the lost innocence account. It was a methodical, terrifying exposé of a planned disappearance, a meticulously curated nightmare exhumed from its 51-year slumber. Liam's initial visceral shock gave way to a cold, professional calm. He photographed everything in situ before carefully securing the strongbox and its contents in an evidence bag. He immediately contacted the Oakhaven Sheriff's Department, his voice trembling slightly as he explained the nature of his find. Dispatcher Brenda, her professional calm tested by the sheer incredulity of his report, recognized the year and the sheer number of missing individuals immediately. Within minutes, unit cars were en route. Sergeant Miller, the veteran officer who had been a rookie when the case first broke, was dispatched as lead. As uniformed officers cautiously secured the perimeter, Miller carefully documented the scene, his experienced eye noting the deliberate placement of the strongbox, the careful layering of soil suggesting intentional burial. Forensic specialists were summoned to carefully extract and preserve the fragile evidence, their preliminary assessment confirming the age of the materials and the deliberate nature of their concealment. The definitive link to the Oakhaven 31 was undeniable. Sarah Jenkins' name, the date October 12, 1974, indelibly marked on her journal, resonated with a chilling certainty. The discovery detonated like a bomb in the quiet Oakhaven Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Brody, now in his late 60s, his face etched with the 51 years of unanswered questions, was immediately called in. The thick, dust-covered cold case files of the Oakhaven 31 were unceremoniously dragged from storage. An emergency interdepartmental meeting was convened. Sergeant Miller, now Chief Miller, presented the findings, his voice grave. The narrative had irrevocably shifted from tragic accident to meticulously orchestrated crime. A dedicated task force was immediately assembled, pulling in state investigators and federal resources. The scant evidence that had languished for half a century, the lone sneaker, the peculiar button, the ambiguous tire tracks, was re-examined in light of this definitive breakthrough. The meticulously preserved artifacts in Liam's strongbox were the key, promising to unlock a truth far more complex and devastating than any previous speculation had dared to imagine. This was no longer a cold case, it was a live, unfolding investigation, and the truth was finally beginning to bleed into the light. The news, carefully managed by the Sheriff's Department to prevent panic, reached the families slowly, painfully. Sarah Jenkins' parents, veterans of decades of grief, received the call with a mixture of renewed terror and fragile hope. Mike Davies' sister and Emily Carter's mother were notified simultaneously. The official notification is stark, a personal formality against the backdrop of their lifelong agony. The community of Oakhaven, already scarred by the original tragedy, braced itself for what this new revelation might unearth. The initial hints, coercion, manipulation, a planned separation, painted a picture far more sinister than a simple disappearance. The fragile peace they had found, or perhaps merely endured, was about to be shattered by the violent intrusion of truth, a truth that promised to be more disturbing than they could ever have prepared for. The 31 ghosts of Oakhaven were finally stirring, and their story was far from over. The sterile quiet of the Oakhaven Sheriff's Department, usually reserved for county disputes and minor traffic stops, crackled with an unfamiliar energy. Chief Miller, his face a roadmap of exhaustion and dawning realization, convened an emergency task force meeting. On the table lay the contents of Liam Thompson's discovery, Sarah Jenkins' journal, photographs, doctor documents, and the critical, albeit corroded, strongbox. This wasn't just a cold case file being reopened, it was a portal to a decades-old crime, laid bare by 51 years of buried truth. Modern were already determined. DNA analysts the sheer volume of meticulously preserved evidence, detailing planned separations and veiled threats, painted an irrefutable picture of a sophisticated, orchestrated event, not a tragedy of nature. The urgency was palpable. This was the definitive opportunity to break the 51-year silence, to finally give a voice to the 31 departed souls. The forensic laboratory buzzed with activity. The DNA retrieved from the faint trace residue on the metallic button yielded a unique profile, a ghost in the system that, when cross-referenced against aging databases, refused to yield an immediate match. However, the analysis of the paper and inks within the documents, particularly the school records and bus manifests, provided a chilling temporal anchor. Carbon dating confirmed the materials were consistent with the mid-1970s, but subtle anomalies in the printing techniques and ink composition suggest a deliberate alteration, far beyond simple record-keeping errors. Sarah Jenkins' journal, its leather supple despite its age, underwent microscopic examination. Traces of a unique soil composite, exclusive to a specific, isolated region within Blackwood Creek, the very area where the service road tire tracks were found, were identified in the binding. The photographs, too, revealed startling details under high-resolution magnification. Faint watermarks on some images indicated a proprietary process, and spectral analysis of the photographic chemicals suggested they were manufactured by a now-defunct private research firm, a firm with a notoriously opaque history. Chief Miller's team meticulously revisited the original investigation files, now viewed through the prism of the recovered evidence. The seemingly insignificant details that had previously been dismissed as red herrings suddenly snapped into sharp focus. The vague testimony of the bus driver about unusual tire tracks near the preserve entrance, previously attributed to local hunters, now pointed toward the service road mentioned in Sarah's diary. The lost sneaker belonging to David Rodriguez, found snagged on a bush off this very track, was no longer just a sign of an accident. Sarah's diary entries, once a source of fear, now read like a chillingly logical progression of a carefully planned operation, coded references to separation drills, vocational aptitude tests, and specialized environmental immersion. The personal letters, previously undecipherable rants, were recontextualized as veiled coercion, individuals being promised advancement or threatened with reputational damage if they refused participation in these special programs. The collective narrative of 31 individuals vanishing simultaneously began to coalesce around a deliberate, orchestrated event, expertly concealed. The DNA profile from the button, combined with the specialized photographic watermarks and the obscure procurement orders for the altered documents, began to form a chillingly precise picture. The forensic accounting team, delving into newly accessible historical financial records of defunct corporations and private foundations, unearthed a complex web of shell companies and untraceable grants. The pattern pointed towards a highly organized, clandestine vocational rehabilitation program operating under the guise of academic enrichment, which had targeted bright, economically disadvantaged teenagers for what were, in reality, exploitative labor and unethical research. The proprietor of this program, an industrialist named Silas Croft, believed to have died in the late 1980s, was now identified through digital reconstruction of compromised personal records and old surveillance footage cross-referenced with the photographic evidence. Croft's signature became apparent not just through monetary flows but through meticulous planning, evident in the very documents unearthed. The methods involved isolating the unsuspecting students, manipulating them with false promises, and ultimately absorbing them into a hidden network, their ultimate fate a carefully guarded secret but one that involved prolonged exploitation. With the perpetrator, Silas Croft, posthumously identified as the architect of the Oakhaven disappearances and his clandestine program meticulously detailed through the recovered evidence, the task force prepared for the final phase. The forensic analysis had pieced together an almost complete timeline. The initial recruitment and manipulation of the students, their covert transportation to a hidden compound on the Blackwood Creek periphery accessible via the service road, and their subsequent disappearance from the preserve itself where they were likely processed for absorption into Croft's network. The full extent of what happened to the 31 students, whether they were deliberately eliminated or absorbed into the perpetual operation of Croft's Start ventures, remained a critical question, but the mechanism of their vanishing was now terrifyingly clear. Chief Miller briefed Sheriff Brody, his voice quiet but resolute, as they prepared to inform the families of the 31. The truth would be devastating, shattering the comfort of a tragic accident or random act, revealing a calculated, decades-long deception that had stolen their children's futures. The stage was set for the final revelation, the ultimate confrontation with a truth that had festered for half a century. The fortified interrogation room at the Oakhaven Sheriff's Department crackled not with fear, but with the dawning comprehension of a lifetime's betrayal. Chief Miller, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, laid out the forensic and financial evidence before Marcus Thorne, the last surviving architect of Silas Croft's clandestine vocational program. DNA from the recovered button, a unique ink composition in the doctored documents, and Thorne's own digital footprint, intricately linked to shell corporations funneling funds to Croft's hidden operations, formed an irrefutable lattice of guilt. Thorne, his face a mask of carefully constructed stoicism, finally broke, a choked confession spilling out. The systematic manipulation of Oakhaven's brightest, the promise of opportunity twisted into exploited labor, the eventual absorption into Croft's shadowy network, a euphemism for fates that ranged from permanent servitude to, in the case of any who resisted or became liabilities, a swift, silent elimination. The finality hung heavy. Not a single student had escaped, only been absorbed into the insidious machinery built by Croft and his confederates. Thorne's arrest marked the definitive conclusion of the Oakhaven 31 vanished chapter. The task of informing the families was an agonizing ballet of compassion and brutal honesty. Sarah Jenkins' parents received the news in their living room, the strength they'd found in their daughter's diary now a fragile foundation against the weight of Thorne's confession. Tears, shed for 51 years, now flowed with the clarity of horror. Mike Davies' sister, holding a framed photo of her brother's effervescent smile, nodded slowly, a profound sadness etched onto her features, relief from not knowing, overshadowed by the chilling reality of his fate. Emily Carter's mother clutched her daughter's favorite sketchbook, whispering its name, finding a measure of solace in the knowledge that Emily's art had, in a way, borne witness. David Rodriguez's parents, stoic even in their grief, simply held each other, a silent acknowledgement of a lifetime's unanswered questions finally answered, though the answers offered no solace. Chief Miller, himself a son of Oakhaven, offered not platitudes but quiet presence, his own sorrow a shared burden. The truth was a devastating revelation, a shattering of the imagined tragedies and a confirmation of unimaginable cruelty. The subsequent legal proceedings were a national spectacle. Marcus Thorne, facing multiple counts of conspiracy, kidnapping, and accessory to murder, received a life sentence, his whispered confession now echoing in courtrooms across the country. Investigations into Croft's network expanded, unearthing similar programs in other regions, leading to policy overhauls and vocational oversight in child protection laws. The reputation of Oakhaven, once defined by its quietude, was now irrevocably linked to the dark secret it had unknowingly harbored. The systematic failures, the lack of oversight on private institutions, the exploitation of rural communities, the limited forensic capabilities of the era, became a stark national lesson. Official inquiries led to mandatory standardized protocols for field trip safety and crisis management, forever altering how educational excursions were conducted. Justice, in its most tangible form, was secured through Thorne's conviction, but the deeper reckoning was societal, a forced introspection into the vulnerabilities that allowed such darkness to thrive. In the years that followed, Oakhaven began its slow, arduous process of transformation. The Blackwood Creek Preserve was officially designated the Oakhaven Memorial and Educational Center, its dense woods now a place of solemn remembrance, its former hidden facilities meticulously documented as a testament to the perverseness of exploitation. A permanent memorial plaza, engraved with the names of Sarah Jenkins, Mike Davies, Emily Carter, David Rodriguez, and their 30 silent classmates, served as a constant vigil, attracting visitors from across the nation. The families, no longer defined by their silent suffering, channeled their grief into advocacy, establishing foundations for at-risk youth and pushing for greater transparency in educational programs. The case became a touchstone for national dialogue on human trafficking and the subtle ways bright futures can be systematically extinguished. The memory of the 31 students, once lost to the silence of history, was now an active force for change, a poignant reminder that even the deepest shadows can be illuminated by the unwavering pursuit of truth, and that every life, however lost, deserves to be remembered. The silence that once enveloped Oakhaven has been replaced by a profound, enduring narrative. The story of the 31 students is not just a cautionary tale of greed and exploitation, but a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the bonds that connect families across generations, and the unyielding power of collective remembrance. Sarah Jenkins' meticulous observations, Mike Davies' optimistic leadership, Emily Carter's quiet gaze, David Rodriguez's vibrant energy, their individual dreams, once extinguished, now serve as guiding lights. The pursuit of truth, however daunting, and the commitment to honor those lost however long it takes, are the ultimate victories. May we never forget their names, and may their story continue to inspire vigilance, empathy, and an unwavering commitment to justice for all, ensuring that no child's future is ever stolen by the darkness again. If you are moved by this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel.